And now, tonight, I would like to introduce our speaker. Tom Renz is an attorney and a freedom fighter. He spent a number of years in banking, and he was an expert on compliance in the credit union industry. He was awarded nationally for his regulatory work. Tom will share his knowledge about the impact of CBDCs on the American system of government, and he will explain the legitimate threat for freedom. Just so you know, Tom drove all the way from Ohio today, so we appreciate his willingness to share his knowledge on this topic. Please join me in welcoming Tom Renz.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm honored to be here. Before I dig into the CBDCs too much, I want to start out with a couple critical things. So first of all, thank you, Thea. This is what we do to take back our country, right? Look at this. I'm guessing most of you are local, and you guys are awake, and you know what's happening, and you can share it. And I know a couple of you guys have been fighting for a while, because I ran into a couple. Scott, I've seen a couple people here. Larry, I talked to back there. He's an attorney. He's fighting local. Yes, God bless him. Let me tell you about being an attorney in this fight. Local action does have a national impact if you're smart about it, as General Flynn says. And it comes down to each and every one of us doing the right thing when it's not easy. So this is a crucial thing. For anybody that doesn't know me, the most important thing that I am is a nobody from Ohio. The reason that that's important, and I'm aware of the fact that, I had one of my people say, yeah, you got to drop that nobody thing. That's, you're on the news, you're doing this, yeah, whatever. Here's the thing, though. I said, no, I'm not dropping it. I'm not dropping it because the one thing that the people we're fighting against fear is the nobodies. They fear we the people, right? I don't want to be something more than that. I want to be we the people. I want to be us. I want to be part of this. I want to come here and be with you guys. So we the people have the capacity to take back the power of this nation. I'm a nobody from Ohio. I didn't have anything special. I didn't have any money. I didn't have any connections. I didn't have any big shots backing me. Donald Trump didn't tweet anything that I had to say. I was just a nobody, and I fought. And I fought like hell, and I'm still fighting like hell. That's what you guys want. Number one thing. I don't care what I say. You may not like a single other thing I say, but please take that with you and remember that. And be here next month and the month after that. And then bring someone. And then bring another person. I've said a lot of times, so I can go on. We've got metrics and we've got people who tell us, stuff. I can go out and if I really hit the media hard, I can have 20 to 50 million eyeballs on what I'm doing in about 2 weeks, right? That's pretty impressive for nobody. 20 to 50 million. Do you know what the percentage is of those people that will actually do anything, though? And that's the problem. That's the problem. You want to know why we're in a bad spot? Because of that. You don't have to do a lot, but you got to do something, and you got to have the courage to stand for what's right. And I want to urge you to do that. We're going to talk about CBDCs. We're going to talk about threats to our freedom. If I tell you about it and you don't do anything, who cares? Right? If you just listen and you don't share, you don't do anything with it, then you had a nice night, you heard some stuff, and then that was it. We have to fight back, and we have to fight back hard. Our nation is teetering on the brink, frankly. And I had some really terrifying calls in the last week or two with some of the big shots that we're all hoping are going to change our world and save our universe, and they don't know what the hell they're doing. I'm going to be real honest with you. And it's not that they're bad people. It's not that they don't care. It's that the attacks come hard and they come frequently. And the bad guys in this fight are powerful. I'm going to come back to some of that, but let me talk to you a little bit about CBDCs. So for those of you that don't know, CBDCs are central bank digital currencies. What's that? I want to start at the beginning because I got 45 minutes to put you to sleep, so I can share all sorts of good things, right? So much like law, and I want you to hear this, much like law, currency of any kind is a fiction that we all believe in, right? So when I tell you the speed limit's 55 and you drive 60 and everybody else is driving 60 and nobody's getting a ticket, does it matter that it's 55? Nope. Currency is the same thing. Somewhere along the line, some guy decided that that little shiny piece of gold or that paper dollar or whatever was worth something. And it was easier for me to hand you that piece of gold or that dollar than it was for me to barter, my donkey for your ox, right? It's just an easier way to track it and to deal with it. Thus the advent of money, okay? That exchange for goods only works because we choose to put value in it. How much is a piece of paper that says 1 on it worth? $1. Why? I don't know, because we said so. It's a piece of paper. I mean, my kid can draw a $1 bill. If you'll take it, it's worth $1, right? This is really an important thing. You've got to start here if you want to understand why CBDCs are so important, because you have to understand CBDCs don't happen unless there's a problem that's going to allow them to happen, right? Because how many of you, if tomorrow they said, hey, turn in all your paper money, we're not going to use that anymore, we're just going to digital, how many of you would do that? That's about what I figured. Well, much like COVID, sometimes if you got a crisis, if you got something bad going on, you can motivate people to do things, right? So CBDCs, to get people to move from one to the other, they have to do this progressively. What we're seeing and what we're hearing is that CBDCs are going to be rolling out progressively. And again, I'm going to get into what CBDCs are specifically, but they're going to be rolling out progressively. They're going to start out, we already have them. We are already using CBDCs on the government level and on the banking level. They've got some of the exchange programs are live now. They haven't done away with paper money, obviously, but that's what they're shooting for. They're shooting for that. Which leads to why. Why? What is a CBDC? Well, it's a digital currency, right? So instead of me handing you a piece of gold or a dollar bill or a silver bit, I got a little tokenized thing on the computer, right? So I can hold this up and it says that I've got, X number of token dollars. They're not real dollars. Like I can't actually physically hand you something. I can push a button on my cell phone, and assuming there's no bugs today, I can transfer you money. If there's bugs, that's kind of a problem. But the idea is that it's very convenient, right? I mean, it's very convenient. Who wants to carry cash? We've been carrying cards for a while, right? So we might as well just, carry cards exclusively. And they sell it on convenience. They sell it for a lot of reasons. They sell it, for banks. As I said, I was in the banking industry. From a bank's perspective, this is great. I don't have to deal with all the overhead that goes with cash. I don't have to deal with any of this. I mean, it's much simpler, right? Very, very streamlined. The computers are there. I can fire most of my employees, and I can run my entire bank digitally. That sounds great if you're a banker because you make more money. And bankers care about pretty much one thing on the planet, making more money. The problem is that if this was just about convenience, and if this was just about those sort of things, that would be fine. But it's not actually about that. All central bank digital currencies have one thing in common. They're centralized. What does that mean? So when we talk about computer stuff, right? So they're going to put out a token, right? Your token dollar. And I want you to think about a token like an envelope, right? It's something it's got a bunch of information in it, and that envelope is electronic, but it sits on your phone, it sits on a server, it sits in a bunch of different spots, and that token represents how much money you have, which is just really a number on a spreadsheet. Well, if you use some of your money, it takes from that, that envelope and gives it to someone else's envelope. And if you put money in, or if someone gives you money, it goes into your envelope. The problem is that envelope lives somewhere where it's controllable, it's programmable, they know everything about it, right? The federal government knows everything about it. The central banks know everything about it. There is no privacy with a central bank digital currency, and you want to distinguish between central bank digital currencies and your other currencies, your Bitcoin type, right? This isn't crypto. Crypto lives in its own envelope that no one can access or look at. CBDCs live on the central bank's computers, and they do nothing but look at it. Okay? So understand that when you have this, all money, all transactions, everything you do, let's say that you're an avid shooter, and you buy a lot of bullets because you like to practice shooting. Someone knocks on your door. Sir, why is it that you're buying 5,000 rounds of bullets a month? How the hell is that any of your business? Why do you know that? Because we do. Everything that you do will be tracked from beginning to end. The central bank digital currencies eliminate privacy on a level that we can't even fathom. Your electric bill, your gas bill, how much gas you use in your car. Do you smoke? Do you drink too much? They'll know if you do. If you've bought 20 bottles of vodka this month, they'll know you work at Renz Law. I'm sorry. I'm joking. It's 15. No, but everything becomes tracked. Everything becomes something that they can see. Who's they? Well, central banks. The central banks that are quasi-governmental in many cases, right? Somewhat government, somewhat private. What really are they? Well, that's a great question. And I can go into the details of that. That will put you to sleep real quick. But they're quasi-governmental, and what they really are is just a load of crap, frankly. And I'm trying to oversimplify this and make a little bit light of it, but what does quasi-governmental mean, really? Really? What does that mean? Are you government? Do you have to follow Constitution, or do you not? When do you not? Why? When are you private? When are you not? And they play with these lines a lot. Like if you look at the regulations and some of the stuff that the Fed and some of these quasi-governmental agencies or groups use, it's shady as can be. But these guys will all have this information, and so will everybody at HHS or FBI, DHS. Pick your alphabet, right? And I did say HHS on purpose, because remember, everything's public health now. See, in New Mexico, where guns are public health, everything's public health. Everybody, so this will be shared widely throughout the government. They'll be able to look at you. They'll be able to see what they're doing. Now, none of what I'm telling you is a secret. None of this is like speculative. We know this. We know what's going on. We know how this looks. And this is stuff that we can show you the paperwork on. When you look at the designs and the structures for central bank digital currencies, they're programmed and structured to be trackable. They're also programmed and structured to be programmable. What does that mean? Well, let's say that you've got some money in your envelope. And let's say the government's really mad at you. Well, the government can access it, right? That's one of the key differences. The two key differences between crypto and CBDCs are the programmability and the privacy. It's much harder. Pretty much anything on the internet can be tracked on some level. Okay, I don't care what anybody says. It can be. Okay, so if you think you've got privacy anywhere on the internet, what you have to understand about privacy on the internet, and I'm not going to get into this too much, but privacy on the internet is a manifestation of how much it's worth for you to be private, right? If someone's got enough money, they can crack it. If they've got enough power, they can crack it. So basically, if you want your information to be private, if you want whatever you're doing, if you're me and you're getting ready to sue the CIA and you don't want them to know about it. Yeah, we're working on that. But, you know, and they know about it. There's no way they don't. You know, basically you say, well, what's the value of keeping that secret? Can I afford to have my hackers that are going to be keeping it secret, you know, can I afford the hackers that are better than their hackers that are going to want to try and figure it out? And the answer is typically no, you can't afford that. So there is no real privacy on the internet. And even when we get to the cryptos, there are mechanisms that they can use to crack into some of that. Most of those mechanisms are too complicated and too complex for anything but the biggest of government actors, but they exist. At least that's what the spies tell me. I sometimes, I'm swearing at my computer on a daily basis, so I just go to the experts on that stuff, right? But the thing with this is the crypto, your Bitcoin type things, they're not controlled by the government. It's harder for them to hack. And if they do hack it, it's apparent because they're not supposed to be in there. With CBDCs, it's expected. So there's no warning to you that the government's looking at it. They just are looking at it. They are tracking you. They are watching you. And they're watching everything you do. So with that, you have to ask yourself, well, why? Why does it need to be programmable? Why do they need to be able to turn my money on and off remotely? Why do they need to have anything to do with what's mine, right? My paper money, I think I have $3. What are they going to do with that? They can't take that, right? They have to physically take it from me, which, it's a little bit trickier. But on the computer, I don't know if any of you have ever been hacked, but you turn on your computer and you're like, oh crap, what the heck happened? And this, in my world, that has happened. We have been hacked. There's been issues. We do all sorts of security things. But it's like you don't have any idea. Where did this come from? Where did my whatever go, right? Why is my computer saying that there's this sort of an error? What the hell's going on here? So these are things that can happen. Why do they need to be able to do that remote access on the money? Why would they want to be able? It's yours, right? See, with central bank digital currency, what you've got to understand is no, it's not yours. This money that you earned, presumably, is no longer yours. Now, legally, we can argue about semantics over this, and they're going to say, no, it's yours. From a practical standpoint, if that's the case, and if they don't need the power to take it without authority, why would they have it? Why would they build that in? So what will happen, in my opinion, now this is where we get to a little bit of speculation, but this is speculation based on very, very, very deep dive into this, right? We've looked into this extensively. We've heard a little bit about climate change, right? Which, by the way, was originally global cooling, and then we had a hole in the ozone that was going to kill us all. And then Al Gore said that the world ended in, I think, either 2012 or 2015. We're close to Chicago, but if you lived in New York, you're swimming right now because you're undersea. Now since we didn't really heat up, we've moved on to climate change. But this is a clear catastrophe, the climate change, right? And the only way to control that is clearly with legislation. We want zero emissions. We want to be, there's green policies. Right? And obviously none of this has anything to do with just a bunch of tyrants trying to control we the people. This is just, a good faith effort to keep us all safe from global warming or the ozone or global cooling or something. So let's think about this. How does a CBDC work? How does this control mechanism work? Well, okay, so you've got you can drive this many miles. You can buy this many gallons of gas this week, right? After that, after the first 10 gallons of gas, 20 gallons of gas, whatever, we can't constitutionally prevent you from driving around. But you know what we can do? We can now, thanks to CBDCs, create a progressive tax system. And this progressive tax system can automatically just take money out of your account as needed so that you're up to date on your taxes. And we see, by the way, that you've exceeded that 10 gallons of gas this week. So now the next 10 gallons, you're going to pay an additional 50% tax on. And that's just going to be gone right out of your pocket. And you're not even going to know it's gone because the tax system is going to be so complex that you won't be aware of what's happening, right? The purpose of the AI and all the computer development, all the stuff that they're doing, when you tie this in with CBDCs, it allows for the development of tax systems that are far more complex than any normal person can actually manage or understand. Right now, so I don't do tax law. There's a reason for that. It's the worst. It's literally there's two things I don't do. I don't do family law. I don't do tax law. But tax law is horrific. If you look at the U.S. tax code, it is just awful. Imagine if our federal government could pass another 2,000-page bill that you have to pass before you're allowed to read. And in that bill, they could put progressive taxes on bullets, on guns, on cars, on gas, on energy, on anything they want. And they can make all sorts of justifications. Well, we're just going to raise, the tax, the green tax on gas over 20 gallons a month, just, another 10%. But we're not going to raise any other taxes. There's so many things that can be done with this. And you don't even know. Hey, here's our 2,000-page bill. We raise taxes on this little thing and that little thing. And if you spend more here and if you use more energy and more water, and it's all going to be tracked, right? Because everything is going to be tracked. Everything is going to be managed. Everything is going to be part of this comprehensive AI system that will be watched over every second, right? And because no one has to look at everything, because we've now gotten to the point where computers can be smart enough to artificially think for themselves, AI, they can implement policies that shape behavior, and there's nothing you can do about it. You don't even know it's happening. You just know that, hey, I filled up my truck with gas, and last time I filled up, it was it was $40, but this time it was $150. What the hell happened? Well, you crossed your gas limit, right? This is where this goes, right? It allows them to control that money, and you can't. It's much easier to convince people that money was, if it's not in your hand, it's much easier to take away, right? Right? I mean, if I see myself writing that check, that hurts. I don't want to write that check. Even if I use my credit card to pay that bill online, I'm looking at how much money's there, and I'm going to oppose that. But if I don't even see it, and it becomes a much more palatable thing for people. It's easier to keep the sheep asleep. The other thing about this that you've really got to watch is how it's being implemented, and it's progressive. They know that CBDCs were implemented. I can't remember which country in Africa. I want to say Nigeria, but I might have that wrong. And the people just revolted. They're like, hell no, we're not using that. And so they backed off, right? The people who are pushing this, the World Economic Forum types, the International Monetary Fund types, all these different groups, and you can throw out some private banking names if you really want, but the people pushing this are aware that people are not real happy about it, and so they're going to try and sneak it in. Now, in the United States, the way I think that's going to happen, and the way that it looks like it's going to happen, is through government giveaway programs. Let me talk to you about our economy. You may have noticed it's not great. Why is that? Joe Biden, I heard someone say, yeah, that pretty much sums it up. But I want to go a little bit deeper on that, right? When you look at an economy, what is that? When I say an economy, so you've got to understand any economic system starts with trading of necessities. So if you were to go into, and I did some work on this years ago, if you wanted to go into a remote jungle village in Central America, and for whatever reason, the people of that village, said, hey, we need help, and they found a nonprofit that wanted to partner with them. They're like, our people are, the health issues. We just want to modernize a little bit. And you look at it, they have no economic system, they have nothing, right? The first thing that you do is you develop necessities. What are the necessities? You start with sanitation, water, food, monetary systems. Why monetary systems? Because at some point you have to trade something other than your cow, your goat, your donkey. Otherwise, things become very inconvenient. So as you're developing these basics and you get to other things, energy, food, whatever, all of these things come from or related to natural resources, right? So your basics, once you get beyond growing food and water, it's all come from your natural resources. So one of the things that helped America to develop from an economic standpoint was we're very rich in natural resources. By the way, we got all sorts of oil. If you're, just in case you're wondering, as you pay $4 a gallon, we just aren't allowed to go get it. We have a lot of oil. We also have a lot of other resources, right? There are tons of natural resources in this great country. We are not allowed to get them. What happens when you're not allowed to get your natural resources? Well, let's go to the next step up the economic ladder, right? So you start out, you've got your necessities, your food, your water, sanitation, things like that. Then you get to your natural resources, your iron, oil, whatever. Then you get to what you build with your natural resources. That's where industry comes in. So when we talk about economies, as we go up, you can look at it as kind of like this pyramid, right? You get to your industry. Well, you have to have two things to build things. You have to have natural resources, and you have to have labor. Okay, so the industrial base that made America, the Industrial Revolution, the things that made America, the wealthy, big powerhouse that we were. I say were on purpose. Those things, we had labor. We had people that were working. People used to, actually get up in the morning and go to work. And we had natural resources. Some of those people that were going to work were mining those resources or cutting those trees or doing whatever. When you don't have part of that, you run into troubles. So one of the problems that we have is because we can't mine any of our own natural resources, mine, drill, whatever, we have to import them. Well, the cost of importing a truckload of iron, or a box truck of iron or whatever, putting it on a cargo container and shipping it overseas, that's expensive. It's heavy. It costs a lot. So that drives up the cost of production. Right? So from an industrial perspective, what that does is that means one of two things. Since we have to get our product from overseas, it's going to cut into our profit margin. So either we raise the price of the product, or we could build the product overseas, or but we're no longer allowed to mine. Right? We're no longer allowed to create our own natural resources. So the other side of that is the labor, right? So, and labor is based on two things. One, will someone work for a wage? And two, what legislation, regulation do we have related to labor that will impact, the cost of labor? I like unions a lot of the times. I mean, some of them are a little out of control, a little corrupt. But I like the concept of unions, but, they do raise the cost of labor. The reason that this is all important for CBDCs is, remember, we start out with necessities. We move to natural resources, then we get to industrial. Right now, we're at a situation in America where through regulation, we can't mine our resources, labor is out of control, and then there's a third part, and that is the regulation of any sort of manufacturing through other issues, right? So then the cost of environmental mitigation things, and I'm actually all about protecting the environment. I like clean water. That's great. Global warming, that's garbage. But you want to keep my water clean, I'm okay with that. But there's a difference between keeping my water clean and requiring, systems in a factory that are so cumbersome and so complex that the factory can't exist anymore. We've essentially created a situation now where it's impossible to manufacture in the United States for many products because the costs are too high. Why does this matter? What does this have to do with CBDCs? Well, we're now in a situation where when we look at these CBDCs, there's two competing factions globally. There's kind of the U.S. NAFTA type coalition, right? We got Europe, the United States, some of these guys. They're all looking at working together, how they're going to do that. And then you've got BRICS. Have you guys heard about BRICS? BRICS is winning big right now, by the way, because, and they're looking at gold-backed. Because remember, gold-backed really appeals to like the African nations, for example. Why? They don't mind if they go get their natural resources. If they've got gold, that backs their monetary system, right? So they've got stuff that backs it, and that's a good thing. They can go get their resources. Ours, it's just based on a promise, I guess. I don't know what it's based on. A prayer? We've detached our dollar from anything other than credit. And it was, very much attached to the petrodollar. I mean, when we controlled the oil coming out of Saudi and things like that, but that's going away because Saudi's moving towards BRICS. And so what's going to happen now is you've got these CBDCs that are going to be a little bit easier to implement because as our economy collapses, because we don't produce anything. We don't produce anything in this country. I mean, we have a few factories that do some good things. But by and large, most of the stuff you buy and use on a daily basis comes from China or elsewhere. Well, that means that to buy that stuff from China, our dollar has to have value. When our dollar was, because of the petrodollar, the de facto standard around the world, we had control and influence over the value of our dollar. As that goes away, well, what happens is we say, China, we really want your goods. Great. You got nothing that we want, so who cares? Right? We can't send them natural resources because we're not allowed to mine any. We can't send them anything we build because we don't build anything. What are we going to trade with these other nations? And where are our goods going to come from if we aren't making any of them? If we can't trade with another nation, and if we aren't making any of the goods that we need or want as Americans, where are we? We're broke and not able to buy anything. This is where we talk about the inflation, what's going to happen with the dollar. And as that happens, what you'll see is as the economy continues to collapse, my guess is, and what I believe will happen, is you'll see government giveaway programs, right? But each one of those government giveaway programs will come with a card with your CBDCs on it. It will not be cash. There will be no cash. We're going to give you your CBDCs, and you're going to thank us for it. You'll own nothing, and you'll like it, and you'll thank us for it. I don't know if any of you follow Klaus Schwab or the World Economic Forum, but if you don't, you should look him up. He's special. Now let me ask you guys something. I know that this is kind of, some of the stuff's in the weeds, right? Right? And some of this is, but let me ask you something. What about this sounds like just a good policy decision? What about destroying our industrial base sounds like a good policy decision? What about preventing us? We could drop gas back down to sub $2 a gallon tomorrow. Well, maybe not tomorrow, but very, very quickly. All I got to do is drill. Do you know Biden, because we know who's running things. Did you know that he just shut off another 11 million acres of federal land for drilling? Why? Because oil's so cheap we don't need it? So the reason that this is important is you've got to understand something. They're not just talking about CBDCs and going to try and convince you that it's a good policy decision. They're intentionally tanking our economy so you have no choice but to deal with it, right? Now, there's legislation being passed. Here's how you know when something's shady, right? So we killed a CBDC bill in Missouri. I was quite proud of that. That bill was a 100-and-some page bill that looked really innocuous on the front, right? And by the way, your Uniform Law Association, they put it out, and they're out of Chicago here, by the way. Some good folks there, trust me. Only thing better than a lawyer is a Chicago lawyer, except maybe Larry. They've been putting this out, and they tried to convey. Well, these are just some real basic updates to the Uniform Commercial Code, and it's 100-plus pages. And this is the one that Kristi Noem talked about. She said, well, they don't even read the bill. They don't even know what's in it. This has went out to pretty much every state, and any state that hasn't seen it will. And what it does is it basically, in a very roundabout way, eliminates crypto, but opens the door for CBDC on the state level. Now, they have to do that because otherwise you're going to have states opposing it. Now, luckily, Texas is doing some steps. There's been a few states that have done, they've caught on. There's a few states that are fighting it. But understand, when you see these sorts of things happening, you have to recognize that it's not like, this might, if things go south, maybe they're thinking that this could happen, and they're just, hedging their bets. No. They're doing this intentionally, right? They're passing legislation that was written very cleverly, that they knew most of these state reps wouldn't even bother reading. And the ones that did are probably bought off so they don't care. And they put this out in a way that it would pass so that there was less state-level opposition to CBDCs, right? If the state starts adopting it when they implement the federal giveaway programs, that makes it easier, right? This is an intentional thing. The tanking of our economy has been completely intentional. We could bring our industrial base back tomorrow. Burn the EPA, burn a few of the different regulatory agencies, and open up some of the natural resources, accessing our own natural resources. If we do that, our economy comes back in a huge way. Trump didn't do magic. We had a good economy under Trump. We had a good economy because all he did was get the government out of the way of industry. We, the people in this country, typically like working and doing things and taking care of ourselves. The government is stopping us. And the next phase of that is the CBDC stuff, right? We look at, does the Great Reset, anybody? Okay, so, the Great Reset is not fiction. It's not conspiracy theory. Klaus Schwab wrote multiple books on it. The leaders of our country, both elected and, industrial or, whatever, they're involved in it. They talk about it. They go to these conferences, and you've got video of them talking about it. I'm not making this up. I'm just telling you what they're saying. I don't have to speculate because they tell us what they're doing. They tell us that you're going to own nothing and you're going to like it. They tell us that it's going to be digital this and digital that and that we're getting rid of cash. Why? So that they can track everything. That's their words, not mine. It's always amazing to me when I tell people this stuff. They're like, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist. Do you want to see the video? These are the guys saying it. I'm just telling you what they said. And they've got the power to do it. That's the scary part. Let me read you something. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause supported by oath or affirmation and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. That is our Fourth Amendment. Does the federal government watching every dime that you spend and every single thing you do sound like that? Like, I don't know. Does it seem like that's... I just kind of think they don't fit. Call me silly, right? They don't fit. they won't fit and they're not going to fit. So what they do is they work around these things and they try and pretend things like the Fourth Amendment don't exist, just like they tried to pretend that the First Amendment didn't exist when they told big tech to censor everybody. Just like they tried to pretend the First Amendment didn't exist when they shut down churches, when they shut down political speech. I mean, this is happening very much more commonly now. There's no, and by the way, you know, the CBDC lawsuit that I'm considering, one of them is going to be, you know, in part based on the Fourth Amendment. I don't think I'm sharing any super secrets there. We're looking at it. We're looking at different options. And honestly, so right now, just full disclosure, you know, my caseload, when you're a lawyer, and this is, I think, really important. Renz, when are you going to file a case on this? Well, I don't know. I'm one guy, and typically the cases that I do are, you know, I mean, they're pretty big. We've got some really big stuff I'm working on, and you can only work on so much at once. And if you don't do your job in front of the court, well, they Sidney Powell you. The sanction, these guys come at, by the way, they come after you. If you do what I do, you get, they come after you. So you can't file cases that you're not ready to deal with properly. And even if you think you're dealing with them properly, you better double check your work, because the other side, they don't like freedom lawyers. We're looking at a number of cases. I'm hoping that we're going to have the resources to do them. You know, I mean, at the end of the day, there's two ways that I file more cases, right? Either I finish something so that I can make more hours in the day, because I work, you know, a 16-hour day is a normal day. A 20-hour day is not abnormal. I had a 3-day bender this week, Monday through, I didn't go to bed between Monday and Wednesday, because you do what you got to do for our kids and our family and our future. When we do this stuff, when we fight this stuff, when we're doing this, the other thing that we can do is, if we get the resources, there are other lawyers out there now. We have found other patriot lawyers. Unfortunately, they all want paid. Story of the world, right? By the way, just because I had someone actually, I actually got accused in court of filing cases because I was making great money on it. So I told some people, and I just want to state this for the record. I sent out the first bill for my legal work last month that I've sent out in 2 years. I haven't billed a single person a single dime. Everything I've done has been based on either the donations I could get or just support from people or whatever I could do. So this is not a money thing. And when I tell you guys, well, I'm not doing for applause. I'm doing because I want you to understand something. When I tell you that we can't do it without resources, not a whole lot of lawyers doing it that way. There's not a whole lot of guys doing that. And I don't blame them, because it's hell. But I'm going to tell you that is one of the things that we run into. And, you know, I can't ask, I'm guessing, I don't see any billionaires in this room. Maybe you. But here's the problem. We, the people, are not the billionaires. George Soros writes $25 million checks to his legal crews like that. He doesn't care. But he doesn't need to, because when he does it, he knows that they're going to file a suit that he's going to get bought off on from something. So he makes $100 million off of his $25 million. We don't do that. We file it because it's the right thing to do, so there's no money in it for anybody, so nobody wants to pay for it. So it makes it a little bit harder, and I want to put that out there, because I do know one of the questions I get is, why don't you file this suit? Why don't you file that suit? Well, because I don't have more hours in the day. I can't afford to pay another lawyer to do it. And if you got a better way, if you got a way, let me know. And so this, I put that out there because, along with CBDCs, you're going to see a lot of things happening in the next coming years. And I think particularly in the next 2 years. I'm going to share with you guys this, and this is, when I get information, there's information that I get that I can use in a court. Then there's intelligence information that I get. Intel information is stuff that's I can't always submit to court, right? Because the verification process is tough. And there's different ways that you verify this. This information was verified to me by 3 different people, one of whom is an insider with the World Economic Forum, He actually is there. And, there's some paper out there that backs it up. So I feel very comfortable saying this. So the World Economic Forum has been talking about, and a bunch of these people have been talking about taking Agenda 2030, which is where you have your CBDCs and your zero emissions and your COVID vaccines for everybody and you name it, whatever. All these things happening, and all these things happening in a mandatory way, and this was going to be done by 2030. From what we're hearing, they're trying to expedite the goals and move it closer to 2025. My take on this is that this is in large part because of you. They didn't expect this. Okay, when the lockdowns happened and everything happened and the economy was tanking, all these things happening, they didn't expect the pushback from we the people. And so, well, good news, bad news situation, right? Good news, bad news. The good news is that it's working. They're scared, and I think they're going to overplay their hand. Okay, so I think what's going to happen in the next year and a half, and this is predictive, so again, you take it for what it's worth. Over the next year and a half, you're going to see an expedition of these plans. You're going to see these things expedited pretty substantially. I think you're going to see a lot of push for a lot of things. Expect disasters. Is it going to be a war? Are we going to see another pandemic? Are we going to see economic collapse? Are we going to see a combination? I don't know. We don't know for sure. We see what I see on my desk on a daily basis is, I'll get reports from different places and people who know this or who know that, and they will tell me, we got this report that we saw, and looks like we're looking hard. That Ukraine war may actually turn into something much more robust. It could turn into this or turn into that. Hey, Renz, did you hear about Marburg today? Yes, for the 300th time. And it's a real thing. Could it be the case? Yeah, it could be. I don't know. What I'm quite confident in is between now and 2025, you're going to see a lot of things being pushed. What I'm hopeful is because so many of you are so awake and so unwilling to tolerate it, that you'll have the courage to help others to do the same, and that we the people will stand. Because again, when I started, I said the only thing they fear is we the people. Remember, though, the most dangerous animal is a cornered animal. Okay? And these guys know one thing. I'm not gonna, this is CBDCs, but y'all know my work on the COVID stuff. And, I'm doing the work on the CBDCs, and super secret, nobody knows, but I do a whole bunch of other things, right? I mean, I got my nose in the election, I got my nose in border, I got my nose into everything. It looks like some of these things may come to fruition on a major scale. I mean, we're seeing, I heard Ann's coming, she's coming from the border. She's going to probably tell you about the Iranian and Chinese military-age men who get their papers in Venezuela, come up through the southern border, and they're up here. You remember after 9/11, the soft targets? Remember when we talked about, oh man, what if these terrorists got in here through the southern border and they started, burning our factories and blowing up our soft targets? Not that there's been any random fires or... Can I prove that? No, but I mean, it certainly seems coincidental, doesn't it? We need to keep our eyes open and recognize what's happening. I want to urge you, I don't care which issue you have, I don't care what you believe. Right now, we need every man, woman, and child of every race, creed, color, religion. If you believe in freedom, we need you to join together. And it doesn't matter, we need to stop letting them divide us on everything they can divide us on that's irrelevant, and recognize that our nation was founded and based upon freedom, right? Freedom to live how you choose to live. Now, there's a lot of people who live ways I don't like. But if we limit the freedom and we fight with those people about nonsense right now, we're missing the bigger picture. We've got a real serious enemy here, and it's time for Americans to be Americans first. Not African Americans, not Chinese Americans, not gay Americans, Americans. If you don't believe in freedom, you're going to lose it. We're real close. And 2024 is looking pretty scary on an election front. I'm going to tell you that right now. You would think that there'd be a great plan to deal with all this. You've got Lindell doing some amazing things. You've got some great people fighting real hard. I'm very concerned. I'm praying for our nation. I'm praying that you guys stand. I'm praying that this group grows by 1,000-fold. At the end of the day, the only thing that stands between evil and victory is good men doing nothing. I think we're at the time where I got to do some questions. So let her rip, guys.
How do we defeat the Jimi Hendrix effect? No, defeat the media, because they're the worst. They're the worst because too many people are being brainwashed daily, and it is a scourge on this country.
You're right. One of the greatest scourges that we have is the controlled media, and don't think that's an accident. I mean, we've got the stuff I've learned about the media is terrifying. I like remember some guy from Ohio, and then I find out, no, really, that's true that the CIA does have someone planted there? Really? I thought that was conspiracy theory. Nope. The media is a nightmare. You know how you beat it? Hit share. Hit share. Tell the story. Get out and do this, because guess what? When I look you in the eye and I tell you something, you can see that I'm not lying. Everything I've said, you guys can, I hope you can see everything I've said. I've done my homework. I know what I'm saying. I haven't lied to you about anything, and nor would I. Because I'm here physically, right? That makes a difference. So get out physically and do something. But the only way that we can beat them, honestly, because this is a wide-scale thing, and we've got to talk about it on a massive scale, we just have to blitz it, right? So like one of the things that I do, well, you know what? I'm gonna do this real time. I'm going to tell you right now. So I have pinned at the top of my Twitter feed, I got pinned about the CIA and their involvement in the creation of SARS-CoV-2. Did you know that they were involved? Yes. Okay, I'm going to tell you that they actually were aware not only that it was built, they were aware about the vaccine, and they helped do it. So I don't want to go too far out on a limb, but they did. They're fussy about me talking about that, right? Pinned to the top of my Twitter feed, you have 6,324 shares. That's as many as Elon Musk gets sometimes. When Elon Musk has 6,000 shares, he'll probably have 5 to 10 million views minimum. You know how many views I got? 821,000. 821,000 is good. But when you look at it and compare it, when you talk about shadow banning, that's what this is, right? So what they do is, even though this is a very viral thing, even though I got that many people hitting share, they tune it, they throttle it back and make sure that other people don't see it, right? So one of the things that I do is when I travel, and I'll ask this today, please follow and share. Now, I don't make any money off of Twitter or anything like that. I just get the word out, which is good. So I'm not asking you to do that for that. I'm not asking for the big bucks that I make. If you subscribe to my Substack, I get paid from that if you pay me, but it's free. But at the end of the day, like that was like a clever little plug. I thought I was clever there for a second. I'm a terrible salesman. I hate doing money stuff. But 821,000 for 6,000 shares. I want you to go to Elon Musk's Twitter feed and look at that. We beat the media by forcing it. It's brute force. We either share it on every platform 10 times or we don't beat them. So that's my answer on that.
Hi, my name is David Foss. I'm a doctor of chiropractic in Elburn. I've been proudly shadow banned from Facebook, so
God bless you.
That's nice. One of my mentors for the last 20 years is Dr. Sherry Tenpenny. I looked up her for 20 years. And I know that you're her lawyer, and I was just wondering if you could give any updates on anything that, any good news, bad news, I don't know, No news?
Yep. So I can give you a bunch of updates. There's been some concerns about Sherry's health. She had a minor incident. She's improving. Sherry is, along with being her lawyer, Sherry is one of my best. She's a sister to me. I love Sherry. She's done more to help me and more to help the freedom movement, the health freedom movement, than probably any three people I could list. As far as the health stuff, like I said, minor incident and improving. As far as her license stuff, with that, I'm very, very eager to see the outcome of this case. The case is a crucial case. So for anybody that doesn't know, Sherry Tenpenny's a doctor. She's not exactly pro-vax. Sherry might be the only one that could exceed Bobby Kennedy and the prolific nature of her work on the vaccines. But Sherry's work resulted in them basically setting up and finding a way to try and suspend her license. They didn't follow the law on it. We're fighting them. It's a very consequential case. I would love, so like I do media, I do all this talking, right? But I'm actually, on this one, I'm lawyer of record. And so I got to be kind of careful on this one. What I can tell you is I'm very confident in what we're doing. I'm very eager for what we're going to do. And it's my sincere hope that I'm going to be able to make some real jerks pay for this. I'm very hopeful.
We have a question over here.
Hi, I'm Laura, and this is Larry Terzo, my husband, and we're here to ask you some questions. Probably you don't know a lot about what's in Klaus Schwab's mind, but my husband told me something interesting today. When I think about DEWs, directed energy weapons, which I happen to know are real, I have family works in the government, it makes me wonder what's their plan. What did you tell me, how many people, hon?
Any idea about population reduction by Klaus Schwab?
What was the number that you told me today?
I heard 100 million Americans by 2028.
Okay, so let's hit a couple of those things. First of all, I can confirm, I have no evidence whatsoever that directed energy weapons were used in Hawaii, but I can confirm that they are real and in use. I have paperwork from the government. There's zero question. This is a thing, okay? And it's not just America that has them. There are other countries that do have them. So the directed energy weapons are a legitimate and real thing. Did they use them in Hawaii? I don't know. I got no evidence on it. I do know I got a lot of friends over in Hawaii who talk to me, and they've never invited me. Well, they've invited me. But anyways, there's a lot of shadiness in this Hawaii thing. I'm certain there's more there. What was it? I don't know for sure. But yes, I want to confirm, because when people say, well, is that real? No, I've got the government, the GAO and some of these other documents. They really do. We've paid for these. We have these. They work, and so do some other countries. Okay, so that is a legitimate thing. As far as population reduction goes, I have done every sort of acrobatic trick that I know as a lawyer to dodge saying this is a depopulation agenda. The reason that I have is because I had a mainstream press guy got a hold of me, and he's like, "You're just a crazy depopulationist. Talk about that." I'm not a crazy depopulationist. I'm just watching the population decrease. So let me say that, right? I'm watching the population decrease. Why? Birth rate's down. Yep. Deaths up. Yep. Life expectancy down. What's that mean? I mean, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, well, you see that our life expectancy, all these things were going up for years and years and years. And then all of a sudden, as our technology and our understanding of health gets better, suddenly that turns around? Why? Well, I don't have a piece of paper to show you that says we intend to reduce the population of the world to 600 million. Okay? I don't have, I mean, certainly there's all sorts of stuff out there on that, but what I can tell you is that when it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck. I know that you're going to you might as well be ready for this, right? So we said this in the summer of 2021. I blew the whistle on this. I had insiders as far as this goes, we knew that they were going to have all the issues that you're hearing about today with the vaccines. We were very clear about that. In fact, for anybody that wants to challenge me on that, I will show you the document that was presented to the FDA in October of 2020, before they were released, that said we expect myocarditis and pericarditis and reproductive problems and stroke and death and carnage and chaos. And the FDA says, well, we're going to monitor for safety real clear, real close, right? And they listed all these databases that they're using to monitor for vaccine safety. Have you seen any reports from any of those databases? One thing you saw is VAERS, right? You know why you saw VAERS? First, because legally it's already out there. They can't shut that down. But second of all, did you know that VAERS was held to be unreliable in court? I can't use it as evidence in a court. It's useless. Now, the best system, Project Salus, if you guys follow my work real close, you'll know that some of these things I've put out, stuff where we've gotten whistleblower data, those are real good. But for some reason, those reports aren't public. I'm not sure why. I'll let you guys speculate on that. But I don't, much like the CBDCs, this is, and I want to tell you guys, this is something super important if you're not aware. I would imagine it sounds like this audience is acutely aware of this, right? But if you don't know, all this is coming from the same people. Okay? The same group of people that are pushing CBDCs are pushing all the things related to the WHO and the vaccines and the stuff like that. So understand, this is very intertwined, and if we had another 2 hours, I would explain to you in great, extensive detail how it's intertwined, where it works, where they're connected, where they're not, because we've gone through all of this extensively. That's why when I said I've got my nose into everything, 3.5 years ago, I'm suing my governor because I figure he's a crook locking me in my house. I was pro-vaccine at that time. This isn't something where I was like a lifelong anti-vaxxer. This is something I followed the evidence every step of the way. That's why they haven't been able to discredit me yet, because every time I say it, I got the paper to back it up. Everything I'm telling you, I can back up. I just didn't have a choice but to come to the inexorable conclusion. Are they killing people? Yeah, they know they're killing people. They know damn well they're killing people. Kids, too. Babies, kids, and, no. And you know what? I can tell you they don't want you to see it, and the reason I can tell you is because in 2003, a guy named Nowak, who was a communications director for the CDC at the time, put out a presentation where he laid out in extensive detail the use of fear to sell vaccines. And part of that was showing people dying, showing this as a much scarier thing than what it is, and trying to convince you that you're supposed to be scared. Well, if you start showing kids dying from the jab, well, that ain't going to go well, is it? I had a 5-year-old little girl about a half hour away from my house, dead. And you know what it was from. It's within a couple days. We know exactly what it was from. She was a beautiful little girl. I don't have a lot of patience for these people.
Hi,
Yeah.
Dale. You talked about Agenda 2030 being moved up to 2025.
Yeah.
We're going to have an election in 2024.
Yes, sir.
Do you have any comments or observations about the slate of candidates for presidency, actually on both sides, either that would enhance this globalist movement or could actually help us to slow that down or even prevent it?
Sure. So I have a lot of number one guy I want to point. I mean, there's a lot of guys that we all would look at and be like, okay, no way. Mike Pence? Yeah, okay. So I'm not going to get into everybody, but thank you. I want you to be aware of Vivek Ramaswamy, or whatever you say his name. This guy is, in my opinion, I don't trust, I get all sorts of alerts on this guy. This guy, I think, he says the right things, but he just seems like a snake to me. So I would really be aware of him. He made all of his money with and for Big Pharma, tied in with the WEF, tied in with all these different things. I don't trust that guy. I like Bobby Kennedy a lot. I know Bobby. You know, I've had the pleasure of spending some time talking to him a few times, and Bobby's a good guy. You know, he's a good guy, and he's got it right on a lot of things. There's a couple things that I don't disagree with him on, or that I do disagree with him on. But generally speaking, I like Bobby. I think the problem for Bobby is I don't think there's a snowball's chance in hell that the Democrats will let him get there. I mean, they're playing so many games with that. But I will tell you, I've been very open that on the Democrat side, I'm absolutely supporting Bobby. By the way, in 2020, I registered as Republican for the first time in my life. And it was to support Trump because I thought that was the right thing to do. I still like the Donald, and as of this moment, he's my man. The one thing that is beyond me is his position on the jabs. I mean, for God's sakes, please quit talking about Operation Warp Speed was a lie and a disaster, but he did so many other good things. And then we've got DeSantis. Now, I like DeSantis. I think DeSantis has done a great job. I really sincerely wish that DeSantis would have held out till 2028, because assuming we have another election, yeah, I think that it was good. I think there's a shot. But then, you know, the thing about the elections is this. We don't know, right? We don't know. We don't know. You know, we know there's going to be corruption. We know there's going to be problems. We know that there's going to be issues. How big? You know, Lindell's got some great stuff going. So do some other people, you know, try and combat election fraud. Is it going to work? I don't know. I mean, we know that Joe Biden has zero chance of winning a fair election. Nobody likes the guy. I mean, he poops his pants at the Vatican. So Biden, you know, I mean, he's a disaster. But I don't even know if they're going to let him run again. You know, it looks right now like in 2024 that, yeah, the Democrats are kind of looking for a way to let him disappear. You know, there's an interesting article that a buddy of mine put out on, you know, thinking that they're going to try and get Michelle to run. I got so many jokes, so many jokes, but yeah. Well, I think he'd be a great. I mean, she'd be Michelle. So, but really, realistically, though, we've got to look, right? We've got to look. We don't know what we're looking at. What I know is right now on the Democrat side, you know, Bobby's good, but outside of that, everybody else just belongs in a prison or under one. On the Republican side, there's a whole lot of rhinos running, a whole lot of them. Like I said, I don't have any issues with DeSantis. I just don't think he's got a shot this season. I like him as a governor. But I think, you know, running up against Trump, unless they're successful in getting Trump put in jail or somehow, you know, getting him off office. But, you know, if that happens, my concern is really a practical one, right? What happens if a guy that so many, you know, that 80 million people voted for and so many people love that much is essentially railroaded off the ballot? What does that do in our country? I'm very concerned about that. So I'm going to be, like I said, in the next year and a half, 2 years, I'm very concerned about what we're going to see. What I do know is we've gotten quite a bit of intel suggesting, so the WHO treaty will actually come into effect where they really want to push this in 2025, right? And what we had heard early on, and this may have changed now, is that the next pandemic was set for a little bit after the election. They figured that Americans were done with it. This was intel, right? I can't prove. I don't have a paper on this one. But they figured that Americans, others, were so sick of it that it might backfire if they tried to do another one. Now, you know, things are changing. They're accelerating a lot of the plans, doing a lot of things, and you know they got to have that WHO treaty if they want global governance, and they got to get it into place and understand something. Klaus Schwab was very clear and very accurate when he said the fourth industrial revolution is winner takes all. Do you think, if you believe as I do on the vaccines, on COVID, even if it was, when people finally widely realize, and we've got the paperwork on this, yes, COVID was created in the lab. They did 50 different things. Your tabletop exercise, all these different things, Project Lockstep, all these different things to prep for, in case a COVID type thing happens. And then all of a sudden it accidentally gets out just in time to screw with the 2020 election? I don't actually, here's your conspiracy theory for the night. I don't think that it was an accidental release. I think it was intentional. And I'm going to tell you that, if you think that they're above repeating what ended up being the most profitable event in human history, according to the World Economic Forum, I don't think you're mistaken. So, I don't know. I'm scared. I'm a little bit nervous about this election. I just know we got to all be awake and got to be fighting. And like I said, I do think one of the number one aces on the hole with Donald Trump, though, Mike Flynn. So Mike Flynn, General Flynn, is a friend of mine. He's become a friend over the years, and so when I talk to him, and again, remember, just some guy from Ohio, right? Like, I'm not an insider. I don't have any background. But, when I talk to Flynn and I see him light up, he lights up when we talk about his grandkids. You want to see General Flynn get excited like a human being instead of a general? You talk about kids. That man, and that's, so like, part of my job is, reading people, figuring out their triggers, stuff like that, because if I get someone on a stand, I want to make them blow a gasket and say something stupid, right? Flynn's trigger, he loves kids. When you got that kind of passion for kids, and when I hear him talk about why he's fighting for kids, that's a huge deal. If Trump gets in, Flynn's position is huge, and I'll share this little piece of intel, and then we'll get to the next one. I told Flynn, we got word, we figured this out a couple of years ago. Said, General, I said, we figured out why it is that they came after you so hard in 2016. And we did. So I got some intel, and it led me to some research. It makes total sense. Now, if you look at, from a lawyer's perspective, what they did to General Flynn, it was out of control. It was not like a normal thing. It was not a normal case. It was just, it was just screwed up. Why? Mike Flynn ran the Defense Intelligence Agency under Obama for a while, and then he quit because Obama was a crook. When Obama left, after Flynn had quit, Obama fired all the leadership in the intel agencies and replaced them with his guys. That's the deep state, folks. The power of the CIA, DIA, FBI, all these different crews, that's the deep state. They're unaccountable, they're unelected, and you don't even know what they're doing largely. So these guys were put in place. And when you look at CIA, DIA, they have something called Black Book projects. Have you ever heard of that? Yeah. Okay, Black Book projects are not conspiracy theories. Black Book projects are projects that they run with typically private entities, and they run them off book. Okay? Mike Flynn announced just before 2016 that he was going to audit the Black Book projects once he got in with Donald Trump as his national security advisor. We have the paperwork. We can show you, and if you had hours to sit down, I would lay out, if Mike Flynn had ran that analysis at that point, he would have found out about gain-of-function work. SARS-CoV-2 was already created and on a shelf, and I believe, and I've got one piece of evidence that I've not shared publicly yet, but I can prove that the vaccine also existed before that. Well, I have something more than the patents. I've got something really kind of mind-blowing. But had Mike Flynn been there, Mike Flynn could have seen, he would have been the guy that knew how to do this audit. It's a complicated thing. Unless you know how to do it, you don't know how to do it. When they took Flynn out, they took Trump's eyes and ears out. Flynn's not for sale. I know the guy. He ain't for sale. That's my belief. If he is, then he's a damn good liar. That's why they had to take him out, and that was a big thing. And if Donald Trump gets back in, and he's going to bring Flynn back in on that role, That could be one of the most impactful things in our country. I will tell you that. That's my opinion.
Hey, Thomas, thank you for your tireless efforts and for some of the personal time and tutelage that you've given me. I want to ask a question. There was a representative from Minnesota, Elmer, that just introduced a bill to prevent the... What's that? Sorry. Oh, right on. To prevent the Fed from using CBDCs. That's at a national level.
Yeah.
On more of a state's level, and obviously that should be widely supported, I would say. I mean, I don't know the details of the bill, but on a state's level, as far as there's several states that have passed legislation concerning constitutional money. Just having a competing system, because as you alluded to earlier, there's first going to be the carrot, right? But then there's going to be the stick, because people aren't going to want to switch to something like that unless they lose their pensions, they lose everything else. What would you say would be some of the best steps to take at the state level to secure constitutional money and to disallow the use of that and still maintain the use of legal tender for all debts, public and private, as opposed to what they're taking next door?
Yep.
You know?
So that's a great question. Let me start with one of the most important things that I can recommend you all when you're looking at legislation. I have taken to, over the last year or two, when people ask me to help them structure legislation, doing everything within my power to keep bills to 2 pages or less. Why? Nobody reads it, and if it's 2 pages or less, you can't misunderstand it. Now, I've been told that's impossible. Oh, you must be a terrible lawyer. Who does that? I do. I don't care. I can do it, because here's the bill. I've done that quite a few times. Here's the thing. A 2-page bill is something everybody can read and see. If that bill says, something along the lines of any currency that can be tracked should be viewed as in violation of the Fourth Amendment and whatever state constitutional points that you can make, and is thus barred in the state. That'd be an interesting thing. I'd love to see the state AG defend that, and they could potentially. I think that you want to reference Fourth Amendment. I think you want to reference in these CBDC bills some different things to ensure that these things are as compliant with federal law as they can be, because you run into something called the Supremacy Clause. But I think you also want to make them very short and very succinct. If we, the people, can't understand the law that's being written, it shouldn't be there. You shouldn't need to hire me to interpret a law. That's ridiculous. But I think that that's the case. And what that is, by the way, that's one of the things that I'm doing a fair bit of right now. And if you guys, if you run into anybody that wants to sponsor legislation and make a poo storm out of it, I'm happy to help them with that, because state legislation, by the way, lawfare, that's what I do, right? Why lawfare? Okay, I can file cases all day long just like anybody else. If I don't create political pressure, if I can't pass legislation, if I can't push the politicians around a little bit, I can tell you what happens to those cases, because I had it happen to a few of them. I had a couple cases that were absolutely inarguable. They were so good, and there was no question what should have happened, yet they were thrown out in very suspicious circumstances in some cases. Lawfare is how we change things. Lawfare, and by the way, lawfare, as they talk about it with Donald Trump, is not law. That's not lawfare, right? Filing a bunch of unethical cases to try and take a guy out, that's just unethical, okay? Lawfare is when we use the law in conjunction with the public and in conjunction with the political factions to facilitate change on a systemic level. That's what we're trying to do. Legal, political, PR. So when we write these laws, we've got to keep in mind that if the politicians can't get support from the public, they aren't going to do it. But a 2-page bill, everybody can understand. Legal, political, PR, right? So.
Hi, Tom. Thank you very much for your work. I've met a few times at Reawaken America events.
Yes, sir.
And so I had a question came up. There's a patriot here in Illinois. He started an organization called People's Bureau of Investigation to encourage people to investigate people in government.
Good.
Not they should be investigating us. Someone in North Carolina got some information. She filed a bunch of writs, and she got arrested by the government. And in this environment where we have a corrupt DOJ and a corrupt FBI, he went in, tried to do pro se, but then he pled it out, and the judge gave him a 10-year sentence, even though he had talked to no one. And they tried to make the place that he was the general of this organization which had these foot soldiers to do his dirty work, which was a complete lie. And in the sentencing, you know, he had public defender, and it went very badly. So my question is, you know, everyone's got to find a place where they're going to fight. This is a place I want to fight. When I look at J6, it reminds me of the same thing. I knew Terrio when he was in Florida. Any advice? I just told him I got to find a way to get some money. The whole case was about bad water, and you know, there could be people support it because you have to have money for an attorney. Do you have any suggestion in this environment to fight it?
Yeah, so I mean, listen, I'm just going to be real blunt with this. We're at war. It's not a kinetic war, and we don't want it to be, and I fight every day to make sure that never happens. But our way of life, our culture, our nation, our laws, they're all under attack. And, you know, the thing about it is when you get into a dirty street fight, it's a dirty street fight. These guys aren't playing by the rules. I mean, you know, if I filed the kind of cases that Fat Fanny from Georgia filed against Trump, I'd get disbarred. They'd come after me. I mean, look at what they did on some of the election cases that were far stronger cases than that. So you've got to understand something. When you play in this game, you play at your own risk. Every day I'm looking over my shoulder, 24/7, like you can't even believe. It's exhausting. I've been attacked more ways than any 5 people could ever imagine. I didn't even know I could be attacked in some of these ways. That's just reality in this. So you do have to be cautious. You have to be smart. As far as raising money, have you noticed the economy? If you figure out how to do it, let me know, because, man, we could use some. It's ugly. It's an ugly situation right now, but ultimately I'm going to tell you something. I say it that way because I want you guys to be very smart in what you're doing. And I'm going to tell you one of the dangerous areas to get is if you start getting into the litigation and some of that stuff on the pro se side. I love the concept, and I'm going to be real honest with you. To my mind, every person in this country should be able to access the laws and work in the courts. But the reality is that right now is not the case, and you do get yourself into a potential bad situation when you do that. What I'd recommend is that you just make sure, if you're doing what you're doing, that you know what you're doing. The law is, there's a reason that, I was almost going to say there's a reason they make us go to law school, but then I thought about it, and the reason is so that I can pay student loans for 98 years. There's a reason, though, that a lot of people will use lawyers, and that's because of the fact that you've got to, if you understand the legal, I don't think you need to be a lawyer to represent yourself pro se, and I don't think that you need to be a lawyer to understand the law. You've just got to understand that the law starts with what's written, and then it's distinguished in the courts. And if you're not going to take the time to understand what was written and then dig into how it was distinguished in the courts, then you're not doing your job on it. And so either do it well or leave it to someone who will. But there's a lot of ways to fight. And remember, I would tell you this: if you've got something that's a public corruption issue and you've got that evidence, find a lawyer that'll work on it. A lot of times you'll find different groups. There are pro se lawyers out there. They don't want to get into COVID or election or some of that stuff, but you mentioned a water issue. Well, there's groups out there that'll help with that, but you're going to have to find them.
We have a question over here, and I'm sorry, everyone wants to ask a question. This is the last one. Remember, he drove from Ohio, so we have to be considerate of our speaker today. So I'm sure that you can maybe send something on Twitter. But he may answer a few questions afterwards. But this will be our last question.
No pressure. Hi. Okay. Earlier you said that some states are aware of legislative bills that they're passing or trying to pass. I know you're not from here, but has Illinois passed anything thus far that we need to be aware of?
I do believe so. Now, I looked at this. I had to look at Illinois quite a while ago, and I'm not I have to say this. I'm sorry, I'm a lawyer. I'm not licensed in Illinois, so I'm not providing you legal advice. Call a lawyer locally. Okay. Last I looked, and it's been probably 6-8 months ago, I believe that you guys did pass something. I believe that you might have passed that law put out by the uniform law guys, and that would facilitate CBDCs being usable in Illinois. But I can't say for sure. I don't remember. I mean, a lot of times I'll have to survey 50 states, and sometimes I'll mix them up. But I do, if I recall, I do believe you did. Y'all here are not huge fans of freedom. I mean, you guys are, but your state, you got some corruption here.
So we'd like to say thank you to Tom Renz for coming in from Ohio. We appreciate all of his information. And it's now up to all of you in this room to make a difference. He is one person. You can listen to what he says, read about what he does, but it's up to everyone in this room to make a difference because one person can't do it. So please follow him, and I bet he might take a donation or two if some of you might be willing to give him a donation. You want to say a plug where they can send?
Yeah, I'm worst salesman ever. TomRenz.com. If you buy, I mean, we got all the stuff like everybody else, the My Pillows, the Gold Guys, the this, the that, the other. We do take donations. We also have a Renz Law Give, Send, Go. And that's actually, listen, I'm going to tell you guys, if everybody give me $5 a month, it makes a huge difference to me. I mean, you got to understand, we've been running some months, literally, I literally worry about keeping the lights on. God's provided, though, so we're grateful for anything you get, even if it's prayers, especially if it's prayers.
He said, can you repeat it one more time? Renz?
TomRenz.com, TomRenz. It's real easy, TomRenz.com. And then our Give, Send, Go is Renz Law and Give, Send, Go.